Good morning. Thank you all for hopping on this morning. I'm Beth Truzansky. I'm the Deputy Director at Building Bright Futures. Excited to be here with you. And thank you to the CDD team for coming on to talk about this kind of new effort or adaptation. I would love if people can make some introductions in the chat bar. We are recording because we realized the turnaround for this meeting was pretty short. And so we want to make sure that the content can be shared with folks who are in the classroom or unable to be here this morning. So the hope for today is that essentially there was $2.5 million from ARPA funds that CDD was able to identify to try and improve the quality of our early childhood education programs across in terms of different types of service delivery and really build up our mixed delivery system. And we know that our systems have been in transition, changes to STARS. So really thinking creatively about how that can happen. So Ray is going to share a little bit of kind of history of how we got here, a little bit about the new model. We will have some time for some feedback or brainstorm about kind of what folks think about what they heard or clarifying questions. We'll kind of gather that feedback, try and get a sense of what might be able to be incorporated in this current proposal and what can be incorporated kind of longer term as we build the system over the next couple of years. And there is a survey, a follow-up tool that CDD has for you to provide additional feedback in written form as well. So we have a lot to cover in only an hour. So Ray, I'm going to hand it to you. Again, thanks folks for making those intros in the chat bar. Any questions about what we are hoping to cover today? Okay.
Thank you, Beth, and thank you, BBF, for partnering with us to convene this special meeting for the Early Learning and Development Committee. My name is Ray Garofano, so nice to see your faces this morning. I'm the Childcare Quality Program Administrator for the State of Vermont's Child Development Division. I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Is that, okay, share. Okay, can everybody see that? I see heads nodding.
Yes.
Thank you.
Looks good. Thank you.
All right. So in this hour, what my goal is to give everyone a very high-level overview of the quality program supports. Why is this moving? Okay, don't move yet. Sorry. That we have been working on. My team is in the room, and most of you know my team, but I'll say real quick, Lynn Robbins, Amy Bolger, Natalie Noctigal, Joanna Vasey, and Maggie Barch-Pearsall. And I mentioned their names because we've all been working on this program because this is meant to be a hub of supports for the entire system, and our team deals with all the professional development and quality systems in the state. So we've all been working on this request for a proposal to go out to make sure that it's encompassing what the need is currently and sets up a foundation for future supports to as gaps are identified in the future. So as Beth mentioned, there was money left from the American Rescue Plan discretionary funds that we could leverage to implement this new system. So we're excited to be able to have that funding, provide this for programs, and then talk about possible sustainability plan. So I'm going to start with some history. The Vermont Early Education Professional Development System was reorganized in 2015 in the wake of transforming the workforce. This transformation and the change was based on national research, which created a robust Northern Lights program that had embedded resource advisors that were able to provide statewide guidance and advice to individuals around their professional development needs and goals. That at the time left a void in regional consultation and technical assistance that was previously completed by the resource and referral agencies. I know many of you are familiar with those regional resource development specialists that were housed in resource and referral agencies across the state. And this change removed that piece of supports that were being offered. In addition, we have a robust Vermont Early Childhood Network in the state that was formerly named Starting Points. The networks are funded by the CDD and administered by, that should say, Let's Grow Kids. And Let's Grow Kids, as most of us know, is on their way to sunset in 2025. So they are phasing out their administration of the network. So we saw this program that is being implemented as a good opportunity to include and integrate the networks into, because the networks also need supports that are in line with this program that we're developing. The networks, again, if you're not familiar, they provide childcare providers, especially family childcare homes, opportunities for networking, relationship-based supports, and offer regional professional development when gaps are there that aren't met by the Northern Lights system. And they support programs in family childcare homes with STARS and working up the STARS system. And they also engage in activities promoting professionalism and improving the care for children. So since 2015, we've done a lot of activity assessing where the gaps are in the system and what the needs are, and thinking about how to really provide better, fuller support to programs. So we have a thriving mixed delivery system of early childhood education in Vermont. So as I mentioned earlier, the reorganization of the professional development system left that void of consultation and technical assistance for quality and program practices that was provided by resource and referral agencies. In addition, as many of you know, we've been undergoing our STARS revision for the past several years. I'm very excited to share, in case you didn't know, that we are in the promulgation process for that, and the changes will take effect on July 1, start of the next fiscal year. And we held robust stakeholder feedback meetings over the summer, engaged with federal TA partners since January, and those activities really highlighted the need for a robust coaching system as we roll out the new revised, improved STAR system. So again, we thought that this quality supports program would do a lot to address that need as well. And then additionally, in the last year, as we were kind of coming out of COVID, licensors were back in the field. And our internal subject matters who interact with the field and programs identified the need and heard requests from programs around developmentally appropriate practice and child guidance. And then I already mentioned this, but there is now a gap in the system for supports for the Vermont Early Childhood Networks that was created by the transition of Let's Grow Kids. So what are we envisioning for a new model? We are envisioning a supports program. We don't have a great name for this yet. So just so you know, I'll be tongue-tied a lot and might call it different things. We are working on a request for proposal that will offer STARS coaching, particularly around implementing continuous quality improvement program and the Vermont Early Learning Standards. The STARS revision, when it's implemented in July, will have a CQI plan for programs as the backbone of the system, which will really allow programs to focus and be really intentional about where they want to improve and what changes they want to make. And this program, the supports program, will have specialists that will be trained, highly skilled individuals that can work with programs in identified areas of improvement in their CQI plan, and or helping them implement the Vermont Early Learning Standards. So we really envision this as a robust support system to help programs move up in STARS and improve their quality, which will in turn improve child outcomes and help families. This system will also provide individualized, customized in-person and virtual professional development strategies. This will include consultation, mentoring that is identified in the program's action plan. We will also use this program to offer general technical assistance, consultation regarding program practices, developmentally appropriate practices, and other areas. This is meant to be a support program that's pretty customizable based on what the need is for the program. So it's going to we're trying to build a program that will be responsive to what the needs are in the program and have a variety of skills and specialties that programs can tap into and leverage. And lastly, and very importantly, we saw this as a great opportunity to integrate the Vermont Early Childhood Networks which will provide small grants and administer those grants to the existing network system. Important to note here that Let's Grow Kids has generously offered to provide interim funding until the implementation of the new program model later, early in 2023. We wanted to make sure that the networks didn't experience any gaps in services. So we're really excited about that partnership with Let's Grow Kids for the next several months. So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about what this system is not. So I've talked a little bit about what it is and what we're envisioning, but I wanted to make sure that folks understood that we're not going back to the old system that we had in place before the transformation of the professional development system. The previous system had resource development specialists that were embedded in resource and referral agencies that were across the state and each region. What that created was a lot of inconsistency and it lacked alignment, leading to regional gaps. Depending on where you were, you got different services. So we want to make sure that what we roll out and what we implement is consistent and statewide. So we want to make sure that programs have access to regional supports if needed, but that regional support will be consistent and they'll have a hub that will have the services aligned with each other. The old system also organized professional development for their region in the absence of a professional development hub. And we now have a professional development hub in Northern Lights. So this new model is envisioned to leverage that resource when able. So if there's a professional development need that's identified in a region or by a program, and that can be accessed through Northern Lights, these specialists will help that program get in touch and figure out how to implement that training in their program and in their region, but they will also be able to provide customized professional development that's program specific if that's identified in an action plan for that program's improvement plan. So we're trying to get away from inconsistent professional development and hoping to have a system of supports that uses and leverages this existing systems that exist in our mixed delivery system. I said system way too many times there. This new program will also provide supports, including, as I mentioned, with the STARS revised system and other elements of our quality activities from our CCDF block grant. And again, we want to make sure that this program is consistent and aligns with existing supports, and also is able to provide regional help when needed. So again, it's going to be consistent. It's going to be accessible by program statewide. The new model will offer in-person and virtual access. It will have a variety of experts hired to provide various specialty needs. So we want to make sure that the specialists that are hired and come on to provide the supports are able to not only provide regional support, but be able to provide statewide support. So in other words, if we have an infant and toddler specialist that's located in Burlington, for example, and we have a program in Bennington that has that need and needs supports in infant and toddler care, that individual doesn't necessarily need to be in Bennington or housed in Bennington permanently to provide that support, either by virtual means or traveling if that's requested. That individual will be able to provide the supports needed to the program in Bennington. So what we're envisioning is having multiple specialists that have a variety of skills and expertise across the state that will be able to leverage their own expertise and provide supports in a customizable way. They will offer coaching, consulting, and technical assistance to programs. And really importantly, they will be able to leverage and connect programs to other Vermont early childhood education resources and supports. So some of these resources already exist either within our statewide system or through our partner programs. Others are coming soon, like the new STAR system and the business technical assistance. But this will achieve a level of consistency that I think will be really helpful for programs and will be able to help you all connect to the services that already exist. And it will also identify gaps that exist to kind of help us figure out what is needed next. So big question, how do we keep this going? How do we sustain it? So as I mentioned, this program will be funded with American Rescue Plan through September of 2024. We're hoping to implement and stand this up in early next year. We are working on the next future modules of our IS revisions, CDD-IS, and we expect to achieve efficiencies in those with the implementation of the new modules. In other words, we'll be able to spend less money on certain activities that we have to do manually now that we'll be able to include in our CDD-IS system. So hopefully that will give us some savings that we could apply to this in the future. And we're possibly going to be leveraging PDG funds, preschool development grant that Vermont is applying for currently. So that's kind of what our intention is. And moving forward, we're grateful that we have the legislative approval to move forward with this and utilize the discretionary ARPA funds for the time being for the next year and a half, 2 years. And then hopefully by then we will have great savings and additional funding through the PDG grant that will help us sustain this. I'm going to pause for a minute. If you have, that's the end of my, actually, no, I left the important slide off, important last slide, talking about federal procurement practices. So the reason why you haven't heard more details, and I gave a very high level overview of this program, is because we are governed by federal and state rules, procurement rules that ensure that we have to go to competitive procurement for any state system, which means that any potential grantee or vendor can't be involved in development of scope of work and give specific detailed feedback on what will be required. We are working diligently on that request for application currently. We hope to release that in the next 2 weeks, which will have very detailed information on what is needed for the winning bidder of this program. And we will take feedback from this convening and through our survey that we will release, and we will take that feedback into consideration. But I want to make sure that folks understand that not all the feedback will be incorporated into the request for application, and that we will take it under advisement for future policy decisions as we continue to improve our mixed delivery system.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
That was a lot. So just to be clear, the CDD, it will be essentially granting funds to a state entity, a private entity, to administer this concept, this project, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So so we have some questions here. I wonder if there's any. If there's any clarification or additions that anyone else from the CDD team wants to kind of clarify, and then we can open up for, I would love just first reflections of like what excites you, or kind of, if you could make some upgrades to this concept or kind of get us closer towards a longer term vision, what would those be? Any clarifications from Ray or from the CDD team before we move on? All right, Ray, you did a great job. Those were helpful slides. All right, any just quick reflections of like what excites you about what you heard before we kind of get into clarifications of the concept? And there's some in the chat I recognize. Thank you.
Beth, this is Becca. I just wanted to say how much I really appreciate the work and the concept of really leveraging the existing supports that we have, because we have such a robust system with gaps, but instead of coming in and redoing it, really recognizing that incredible list of things that are already occurring across our state.
Thanks, Becca. Any other reflections?
This is Janet.
Some comments. Yeah, go ahead, Janet.
This is great. I'm so excited about this new model and that it's based on kind of quality improvement methodology and more of a centralized approach. You can really leverage whatever we have in the state, wherever it is. Seems great. And it feels very responsive to the current landscape and how to make things better. So thank you for your work. It's great. Thanks for this opportunity to get feedback. It's really nice.
That's great. And thanks for folks putting feedback in the chat. I see Maggie also put a link to the feedback form. I can maybe you can put that in again in a little bit because it gets lost in the chat.
And Beth,
All right.
I'm happy to address one of the questions about how many coaches will be hired. So we're envisioning right now 6 to 7, but that's going to be it's going to depend on what the applicant will see will fulfill the need. So we think we're gonna need about 6 to 7, but once we get the RFA out and we receive applications, we'll have to see what the proposals are and how, you know, if potential organizations they're thinking that we might need more, or you know, we might need to ramp up to more. So that'll be determined, but as we review applications for the program and we see the details of what the applicants indicate.
Great. So I think we have time if there are kind of comments or questions about the proposal, or, you know, if you could make changes, what would they be? Cynthia, you have your hand, and then others can use your hand. That might be helpful to keep people up.
Thanks, Beth. Ray, I'm wondering, can you speak to, for the contracting services for this system, it sounds like there may be an ideal set of coaching functions that are really focused on what's going to be in the new QRIS, you know, licensing standards, those sort of things. Do you envision this system including other types of supports? Like I think of our former nurse consultants, you know, health consultants for the field, or other type of coaching and supports. Will the system include those, or have a way to include those more sort of private partners, if you will, or how might those private partners be accessed in support of this type of work?
Thanks, Cynthia. I will say my personal vision for this is to have a group of individuals, you know, managed by a bigger organization that can be kind of like, you know, not only provide those very specialized early childhood education supports to programs that are around QRIS and program standards and things like that, but also kind of be like a navigator of the system for people to be able to connect people to different services that, you know, maybe within the system or outside the system. In our conversations right now, I think we've talked a little bit about that, but our focus is kind of what I laid out initially. But my hope is that we build a foundation that we can build on, and, you know, kind of looking at the professional development system and this, you know, quality support system in future. I think having these two programs will help us identify, you know, remaining gaps and where are supports needed that these two big programs are not addressing. And then we can see at that time, is that better filled by including it in one of these two systems or implementing something new? Does that help answer your question? And I'm like passionate about always leveraging existing resources rather than starting something new. So if there's, you know, private partners that we can engage with that can work with us to provide gaps, to fill those gaps, I'm definitely open to that and encourage us to think about that.
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thanks so much, Ray.
Awesome. Janet Kilburn, you had your hand, and then Sharon.
Thanks. And I also think the PDG opportunity will support the kind of leveraging what we have in the state, like help me grow an early MTSS. And that's what my question was, is how, and maybe I haven't figured that all out, but I assume that like if a program is implementing early MTSS, somehow this would align, like with the coaching practices or the efforts or the people involved would be collaborating somehow.
And yeah, exactly. And that's where kind of the specialization and the specific skills of each kind of coach, I'll say, for lack of a better word, will come in to play because, you know, depending on what the program needs are, they're going to be connected with the specialists that can meet their needs and bring in the other services that are needed. So I think the word here is like customized. It's gonna, you know, our intention is to be able to be responsive and customize depending on what the needs are.
And would the folks that you hire get trained in early MTSS? Like, I'm not an expert enough to know how that could overlap the most efficiently, but if the people that are offering this service through CDD were trained early MTSS coaches, could that
Can I just jump in
further
really quick?
align?
So Janet,
Yes, somebody.
Early MTSS uses practice-based coaching, which is a model of coaching that can be used for many other content areas. So there
Okay.
absolutely could be alignment.
Perfect. Exciting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Becky.
Thank you, Becky. Sharon, Helen.
Hi. I was just curious how this is, your plan for how this interfaces with Children's Integrated Services and the 4 bubbles that are under CIS and their work in this specifically, and also then specifically specialized childcare that's under CIS, which is currently supporting programs with technical assistance, limited for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, CIS is within our division, obviously, so there's going to be overlap, and we're going to look at our CIS partners in, you know, kind of finalizing the RFA to determine, do we just have built-in connections when services are needed, or do we need like specific specialists that can work with the CIS partners and be able to meet the needs, the specific needs for CIS. Anybody else on my team that wants to add to that?
Yeah, this is Lynn. I think we've started some discussions around potential, connections with CIS. We really haven't developed that out further. We haven't had a meeting with the CIS team yet to see where we might be able to go, but there certainly seems great potential for being able to collaborate, at least, if not more. This is still all pretty new.
But
I think
Sharon,
it's a
thanks
great
for bringing
question.
that up. Yeah, I think
it's a great question. And perhaps I know there's a whole bunch of CIS partners on the call. I think your vision of what is needed to build the alignment, I think would be helpful, either here or in the survey. And Renee, I see your hand up, maybe to respond.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I'm glad you raised it, Sharon. I think it's important to think about the intersections, particularly with CIS specialized childcare. And when we think back to the Race to the Top days, that was a project under Race to the Top, was to kind of make those positions more robust. And part of their job description was actually providing that coaching and consultation to increase the number of specialized care providers in the state and the number of placements for kids in protective care. So this is another one of those threads, right, about how do we leverage regional presence and regional relationships. When Race to the Top monies went away, those positions were scaled back. And so right now, you know, I'm not specialized childcare coordinator. I see there are a few on the call and would love to hear if anyone wants to hop in with thoughts, but you know, those positions were always seen to not just do CCFAP eligibility for children who qualified there, but to also provide more of that on-site coaching, technical assistance for the entire program. So not, you know, focused on supporting specific children with identified needs, but really supporting the program and how their overall environment and their teaching practices supported children with disabilities and others in the classroom. So definitely a good point to flag, and yeah, eager to continue conversations with our CIS partners around how do we make sure that these program supports really complement and connect closely to what's happening within CIS.
Thanks, Renee. Sherry, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Beth. I was just, you asked a question like a long time ago and I didn't answer, but sort of about like what else would you include in the vision? And this is definitely more in the weeds, but as I'm listening to this conversation, one of the things that I've seen in other states when they have a model similar to this kind of a hub, which I love, one of the specializations or a couple of specializations include individuals who can offer support and consultation, related to early childhood mental health or family social worker. And, it isn't as a deep a dive as connecting with CIS and working with a particular family, but they're there to offer guidance, support, and to inform what kind of additional supports or training the field is needing, what they're seeing. So in what I hope this also includes is some kind of access for programs to that kind of support.
That's a great point, Sherry. And, I think that is more in the weeds, definitely, but definitely something for us to think about. I'll also say that you mentioned identifying gaps in the professional development system. I think that's something that we're really going to lean on this program and really have the two hubs kind of complementing each other as, these specialists are in the field learning what is being requested often, and how can we address that through our big PD hub, so then the specialists can focus more on, program specific needs rather than, PD needs. And I also wanted to mention, I don't know if I mentioned this, but the networks will be also be able to continue to provide the professional development opportunities that they have been. At this time, we're not looking at revamping the network model. We are looking at potentially maybe thinking about how the funding works and how to do that in a more equitable way. But the organization that's going to be implementing this larger program that embeds the networks in it will continue to providing similar supports and administration to the network. So those professional development opportunities will continue to be available.
Thanks, Ray. Anne?
I just wanted to maybe add a little bit to the thinking about the connections and relationship with CIS, and just encourage people to think. Of course, specialized childcare has that in the title, and it is the focus. And early childhood and family mental health also provides a lot of support and consultation in early childhood education programs, as well as early intervention around specific children and their developmental needs. So just in listening to Ray's fantastic presentation, my thinking is a lot about partnership and collaboration. I don't think we've have the capacity in CIS, please weigh in, anyone to correct this, to provide coaching. Sharon, you mentioned technical assistance where people can. And I think the document that Northern Lights has on their website about those terms, technical assistant, coaching, mentoring, consultation, is very helpful in the vocabulary of the discussion. But I see this really filling a capacity gap that CIS certainly hasn't been able to cover. So I'm excited about it.
That is helpful to hear, Anne.
Yeah.
Other questions or observations? I see a couple questions or comments in the chat, a little bit more about service delivery and kind of how things are implemented. And I would invite any of those comments about kind of in the ideal, thinking about, for those of you who are on the call and may need to, are looking for support, what kind of qualities or expertise do you feel like would be needed? What might successful support look like? So I'll let you think about that question and let Becky comment.
I wanted to highlight Sonia's comment in the chat because it's something that I've been wondering about as listening to the presentation too, around CDD's vision related to in-person versus virtual. Obviously, whatever you're doing in person has a dramatic impact on how many people you need to hire in order to do the work. So I was curious about kind of what that ideal vision was, because Sonia's raising some really important points about capacity as well as quality.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia and Becky. I looked at that question, and that's something we're really kind of grappling with, trying to figure out how to hit the right balance of making sure there is in-person capacity. So I think that's going to really depend on, you know, the applications we receive based on, you know, the applicant's view of what's needed. We think we know what's needed. We also don't, like, you know, my gut is that there's going to be a high demand for this because there's been a big gap, right? Like it's been a gap for a long time. So, and with the implementation of STARS and, you know, the simplification of that system, I think is going to like create a lot of excitement about people programs wanting to be in the STARS program and wanting to, you know, work up the STARS ratings. So it's going to be interesting to see what the demand is, and can we hit the balance of meeting that in-person versus virtual demand. But I want to assure everyone that our vision is to be able to do both and do both well. So we're not going to like rely on virtual because we can. I think we're really committed to making sure, because the regional gap was something that has been identified in various evaluations of the system and various, you know, stakeholder feedback, that regional in-person support is something that you all want. And we're being really mindful of that and kind of developing and implementing this program.
That's helpful, Ray. Thanks. Becca?
I just really want to say out loud that I think when we're considering capacity and, you know, kind of this coaching model, and we're having this conversation about in-person and virtual and a combination, that we also need to recognize that if we're talking about providing the support across our systems in terms of you know, centers, small, large, home programs, that we really need to look for the organization and the proposal to really have built into it the flexibility of, like, I'm not meeting with a home provider during the day when she or he is in the middle of the mess necessarily. And so I just felt the need to state that when we're thinking about coaching, it's also the availability and flexibility and time that needs to be built into the system, not just an 8 to 4 workday.
Really good point, Becca. And appreciate you raising that.
Thanks. Are there folks we haven't heard from that want to share or ask a question? Are people, I'm curious if there's anxiety, if there's relief, if there's excitement, like, what are you feeling right now? And what other information might be helpful? Alyssa?
Yeah, hi. I feel excited about it. I think it's rad that this is being prioritized. And also, I think to do a high quality, comprehensive job in supporting this system is not a casual undertaking. And so my hope is that it is comprehensive and that it isn't piecemealed together. That's good job.
Thank you. Sharon?
I would agree with all of that. And the need is there. We have, as anybody in Chittenden County knows, we have scraped and fought for private funding to continue whatever we could with ebbs and flows of our consultative work to programs. And we recently have sort of stepped back into that, and we're inundated with calls in Chittenden County for support. So the need is there. I'm very excited to hear about a system like this. I'm also, I like the past person just said, the importance of respecting relationship-based learning in person is crucial. And that those folks that are out there really understand the culture of childcare and the work and the current state of the state in childcare, not just historically, but also with impact of pandemic and all they're dealing with. And a variety of supports beyond the coaching and such. So, you know, I think about currently the special accommodations grant and all that, you know, sort of the nest of spiders that comes with that, but that kind of, that there's a basket of tricks, right? There's a support that can be tailored to the need across the state because it's going to be different, and that we respect that and we address it and thoughtfully. I worry about the workforce and finding these 67 people.
Really important comments. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon. I just want to agree that yes, the need is there, and we do need to be really mindful of the in-person versus virtual and make sure that folks are getting the personalized support that is needed. You know, we're grateful for the funding that we have, you know, but it is a limited amount of funding. So I want to say that out loud, that, you know, I saw a comment that, you know, we want to be able to, yes, we will definitely build the metrics and ways for us, mechanisms for us to understand whether or not the number of coaches and the model is supporting the need. But we have a limited amount of money. So if we can, you know, tweak things to increase the number of in-person opportunities, we will certainly do that. I think my personal vision and hope for this is to be able to leverage other systems of support that exist through other, you know, agreements and funding that the state has, to be able to utilize the specialist for more of that in-person and personalized support.
Janet?
Hi, everybody. This is great. Thank you. This is really helpful. As I'm thinking about this, I'm feeling like and you know, as this process plays out, I feel like there are other states that have implemented similar models. And I feel like it would be interesting sort of as a group to take a look at some of the other models that other states have used for us to get some feedback on what the current, you know, the field in Vermont feels like is the most, you know, what elements of that feel appealing or not. If there's time sort of in this process, I think another point, and I kind of made this one in the chat, but I do think the coordination with the other state programs and other state entities is really going to be important, whether it's Head Start or CIS or the Agency of Education, so that, because there might be things that those other programs are working on, strengthening, building, moving in a new direction. And it would be really important for whoever's taking on this work to be really well informed of that ideally in the proposal creation process, as well as, you know, going forward, those relationships need to be, and lines of communication need to be really open and welcome and stewarded, I think, hopefully by CDD in the process. And then finally, I just wanted to sort of throw this out there as something that I had seen when I was working a while ago more on food systems work, is the Food and Farm Viability Program allows, instead of, there are people who are sort of dedicated coaches, but there also is a place where a program can say, this is the specific support that I need, and they can get a small grant of $1,500 or $2,500 to hire that expert that's really specific to what their needs are, based on their business goals and the growth plan that they'd create, and this is the farm viability program, so it's based on the viability plan they'd created. And I just wonder if there's potential for a model like that to be included in this, sort of practically, and how that with the fund based on the funding source. So just not expecting an answer to that right now, but just throwing it out there as a in trying to think about ways that we can really flexibly meet the needs of early childhood educators and the programs that they run.
That's a great suggestion, Janet, and maybe we can use some time at a future ELD meeting to look at some of those other models. That's great. Joanna, you have your hand up, and then Sonia, and we are coming up on our time.
Just quickly, I wanted to just make a clarifying statement about Sharon's comment concerning about the impact on the workforce of hiring 67 specialists to provide support. It's 627, not 67. So there will be some great people in the workforce that will be coming to work on this, but not 67.
Important. Thank you. Sonia.
Thank you. This is really great. I really am excited about this whole idea. I think, in terms of the programs and their utilizing of this, I think you are going to have a massive uptick, if I had to take my guess. So I would recommend being well prepared for that. I have no idea what your budget is, but it's never enough, of course. But I also really like the idea that Janet was mentioning about looking into other states and what they're doing and how they've grappled with this. And I saw that Renee mentioned it as well. Like there's people doing this, and there's things that are working really well and things they're still struggling with. Also, I feel like we need to kind of take an inventory somehow of what else exists and how well it's actually working. And I'm going to use early MTSS, and this isn't to throw anybody under the bus, as an example. I have not a program of 8 classrooms that have wanted to have coaching in early MTSS for 15 years and have not been able to access it. Something is not right. We have not got that down yet. I don't know what it costs or takes, but before we start accessing and taxing programs that already are struggling to finance enough and whatnot, I would encourage us to kind of take stock of how effective what we're currently doing is, like where it's happening really well and where we can like collaborate to help things work better and or take advantage of what's already existing.
I just want to address one thing that came up in a couple of questions, is that we have engaged with federal TA partners about what other states are doing and have looked at that in developing our RFA. So I just want to make sure that that is known. I think great suggestion, Janet and Beth, to kind of have the ELD continue to work on kind of like, what does this look like? And then make recommendations to the CDD for future iterations of this program. I also want to clarify, like, I'm loving all these suggestions, and there's some really kind of good points for us to think about as we're finalizing the RFA. But we are hoping to release this in the next couple of weeks to kind of have a system stood up early next year. So you know, I understand it's not ideal that we come to you a couple of weeks before the RFA is being released, but I do want to make that point and also say that we will kind of take all this feedback and synthesize it and review it as a team internally and see if any of it can be incorporated. I think there's some good points that were made that we can take a look at in finalizing the RFA, but also be thinking about this for future and future improvements and the entire system, not just for this program.
Thanks, Ray. So with that, we are coming up on time. I think this has been really helpful to be able to, for you to present the vision and the concept, especially before the RFA is out there, so that the field can, you know, be better prepared, right? And provide some input. So thank you to Ray and the CDD team for joining this special Early Learning and Development Committee meeting. The Early Learning and Development Committee is one of the 7 Vermont Early Childhood Action Plan committees. So it's really a statewide committee that seeks to really kind of share information, identify where there are gaps, where there are opportunities in the system, specifically to the goal in the VCAP, which is helping families, children and families have access to high quality opportunities, right? So we are talking about quality, and you know, clearly there is so much investment, and I think that is such a strength. So thank you for tuning in today. The next ELD meeting is on November 10th, so if you are not currently joining those meetings are open. They also are recorded. So if you'd like to receive notifications, let me know, or Sherry Carlson, who's the private co-chair of that committee. So and again, thank you both for everyone for joining today. And we look forward to seeing what the RFA is and where this goes. And I think there's so many opportunities. So thanks, Sherry, for putting your email in there. Okay, we are all set. Have a great morning, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for hosting. Thank you, everyone.